First DNF because of an accident. It just gets around on him.
Then when he went to catch it, he caught the 29 as well.
After his two best weekends in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with back-to-back wins at Portland and Sonoma, Shane Van Gisbergen just put together his worst weekend, not just in the Xfinity Series, but in NASCAR. It's his first ever crash DNF, or his first ever DNF due to a crash, and he finishes 34th. But we're still going to talk about what was a terrible weekend for Shane Van Gisbergen, not just the race, but as I said, the weekend as a whole. First, the information about Iowa Speedway. Iowa Speedway, it's the first Xfinity race here since 2019, so 5 years since the last one. A partial repave was done on the inside lines of turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Everywhere else, very rough, a very sketchy racetrack, as we have seen. High tire wear going on in this race right now as I speak, and at the beginning of the race, of course. The track is considered a short track. It is 7/8 of a mile, which is equivalent to 1.4 kilometers. And it's, as I said, the first time since 2019, as I said earlier. Fun facts about the state of Iowa, very well known for their corn. We're going to talk about it all weekend long in the NASCAR world. Corn, cornfields, popcorn, corny jokes, whatever it may be. But here's my ultra fun fact about Iowa. Iowa football. This is like the third time I've talked about this on the channel this week. Iowa football is known for not scoring a lot of points on offense in American football. And in American football, when you can't score points, you have to punt the ball away to the other team. Well, Iowa, known for winning, known for punting. Punting is winning, by the way. They have one of the great Australian exports. Punters. Yes, a few of their punters over the past few years. A lot of American football punters have come from Australia over the years, but Iowa football has had some great ones, and I just really wanted to talk about Iowa football. They are known for punting. Punting is winning. That's about the only time I'm going to be, I guess, give you happiness, you the viewer, if you are a Shane Van Gisbergen fan. That is about the only happiness you will get out of this video, because, all right, let's dive into it. Let's dive into Shane Van Gisbergen's worst NASCAR weekend at the short track in Iowa. 12 to 14 degrees of banking in these turns. Progressive banking is where, the bottom of the track has a little bit flatter. You can run that inside line, but as you go up the banking, there's a little bit more. And obviously at this track, it's not that extreme of a difference from 12 to 14. It is a difference, but it's not that big. As I said, the repave has been a talking point in the NASCAR world with the inside lines being repaved. But as I said earlier, this track has been sketchy. The bumps at this track are extreme as they go down the straights, as they exit the turns, enter the turns. The bumps have been insane. And as I said, we saw a lot of high tire wear in practice, Cup practice, Xfinity practice, and early on in this Xfinity race, we have seen a lot of tire wear, tires blistering and whatnot. And for Shane Van Gisbergen, this was supposed to be a good week. They are locked into the playoffs. They don't really have to stress about points anymore. The possibility of finishing top 10 in the points is still there. You get bonus playoff points if you do that. But in terms of making the playoffs, having to win, having to be competitive, that pressure's out the window. But a big thing that Shane Van Gisbergen had talked about leading up to this weekend's race is practice. Normally, there's only 20 minutes of practice for each group, Group A and Group B, and then you get one qualifying lap. Well, this week, because Iowa has been a track that has not been run in 5 years in the Xfinity Series, they got a 50-minute session where everyone got to run at once, and that meant that everyone got to have a long practice session. Everyone got to have as many laps as they could. We saw a few guys go north of 50 laps of practice. We saw some guys sitting in the 30 to 40 range. Well, Shane Van Gisbergen, after talking about how important it would be to get a weekend in of a full practice session of 50 minutes, then getting to qualify the car on Saturday morning, well, he only got 22 laps in on practice and he crashed. Lost it off of turn number 2, slapped the outside wall, and this was the first crash in Shane Van Gisbergen's NASCAR career that had terminal damage. He had a couple of incidents at Daytona in the season opener, but ultimately there was no terminal damage. He rallied to finish, I think, 11th or 12th in that race. But this here in practice was Shane Van Gisbergen's first ever real crash, I would consider. They had to go to a backup car, and due to the rules of the Xfinity Series, that meant regardless of where Shane Van Gisbergen qualified, he'd have to drop to the rear of the field, start last place. And also due to the rules in the Xfinity Series, the backup cars, the teams are limited to how many backup cars they have, not just Shane Van Gisbergen's number 97 team, but all of Colleague Racing. So between Allmendinger, Josh Williams, and SVG, they are only allowed to have 2 backup cars at the track, and you are not allowed to wrap those cars, so the color of the car changed overnight. And so Friday after practice, they decided to go to a backup car. And this morning for qualifying, well, it was rained out. There was no qualifying, so the second time this season, Shane Van Gisbergen did not get to qualify. But due to that, the way that things work in NASCAR is if there is no qualifying session held, there is a metric put together, which is a mix of last week's race results, the owner's standings, and the driver's standings. So that meant Shane Van Gisbergen would have started second in this race, but as I said, he crashed in practice and had to start at the tail end of the field, which is just another gut punch, I feel, for this weekend. We just talked about how SVG emphasized having a full practice session would be huge for him. It would be huge for the team to get to learn stuff at not just this track, but going down the road, going to other short tracks. And, well, they crashed early on in practice and really ruined any possibility of fully utilizing that practice session. And then on top of that, they would have had a great starting spot because qualifying got rained out. And obviously yesterday, they couldn't have predicted that or been for sure that practice was going to be rained out. But if they had got that full practice session in, if they had started second place, maybe this race would have went better. But ultimately, nothing to report up until the crash. SVG ran in the 30s all day long. As I said, started at the back of the field, got lapped in stage 1. He eventually got his lap back, but as soon as he did, he was running about 26th, 27th, and that's when the crash happened. Coming out of turn 2, just lost control of the car, tried to save it, overcorrected, took out the 29 car, and I think he clipped the 91 as well. Kyle Weatherman, I think it's Blaine Perkins in the 29 this week, but Shane Van Gisbergen took responsibility for the crash, said it was his fault, and that's Jeff Burton in the NBC booth. He talked about this a little bit, and he just basically said, that's one of those incidents where, you know, it's going to hurt your confidence as a driver. I know SVG's just won 2 straight races, coming back to an oval with a lot of confidence, and he puts together his worst weekend in NASCAR. And for sure, I think it's going to hurt his confidence a little, but I don't think he'll dwell on it too much. But at the same time, Jeff Burton did also point out that that's just kind of one of those incidents where when SVG started to lose the back end of the car, that's one of those moments. Just spin out, man. Just to put it lightly, just spin out and hope that there's no damage to the car. If your tire's flat spot, go pit, go a lap down, go 2 laps down, and finish 27th on the day. But at least you get the log laps. At least you get a few more points on the day. But he overcorrected the car. He took out a car with him or 2 cars with him, and he heavily damaged the car, meaning that he would not get any more laps. He would not get to learn. And this is something we've talked about all year long with Shane Van Gisbergen. Get all the laps in. If you finished 18th, who cares? If you finished 24th, who cares? If you can get all those laps in, if you can finish on the lead lap or even just 1 lap down, every bit of learning that you can get in this first year in NASCAR as a full-time driver, it is a huge, huge thing to have. And ultimately, they didn't get that this weekend. So lots of missed opportunities this weekend. It was going to be a rough weekend regardless, but with the extra practice, there was a little bit of hope that he could be a little bit more competitive. And just very quickly, it went downhill, and ultimately it ended up being, as I said, the worst weekend in NASCAR for SVG. But as I said, it's going to be a learning experience. You know, sometimes you're just going to have to spin the car out, and hopefully he'll learn that in the future. But Shane Van Gisbergen, after his 2 best weekends in the Xfinity Series, has his worst NASCAR weekend. So let me know what your thoughts were. I got to go watch the end of this Xfinity race. We'll see who ends up winning it. Chandler Smith has dominated so far. Tire wear, a big factor. But we will be back tomorrow for sure to talk about the Cup Series race. Anything else I will talk to you about. If anything, I guess, noteworthy in the Xfinity Series race happens, I'll be back here later tonight. If not, I'll see you for the Cup race tomorrow. But thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day, night, morning, wherever you may be.